and I had never really explored it much, but this expedition has made me think to myself, I need to go there. This is incredible. So hopefully, if you haven't been there, you can go maybe sometime in your life. And so Machu Picchu is the ruins of an ancient settlement suspended high above the rainforest between two conical peaks. The UNESCO World Heritage Site is an exceptional place for architectural harmony with the spectacular surrounding landscape. That's one of my favorites. If you look around, it's just all of this stuff is carved into the side of these mountains, and it's just really fascinating, a really fascinating place to go to, and the scenery is just absolutely beautiful. So first up, we have the Andes Mountains, which you can kind of see over there in the distance, right below the cloud tips. So Machu Picchu lies on the eastern inland side of the Andes Mountains, about 2,350 meters above sea level. Peaks in the distance reach more than 6,000 meters. This range begins near Cuzco, one-time capital of the Inca Empire. And of course, the Inca Empire is now no longer in existence, unfortunately, but this was kind of like the big place of the Inca Empire. So now up next, we have the Machu Picchu ruins. That's kind of what we were looking at when we first started. It's a complex, the Machu Picchu site is just a complex of temples and palaces and dwellings, and then they also have agricultural terraces, which we'll check out a little bit later. All of this was built by the Incas in the mid 1400s, so this stuff is super old, and it's amazingly withheld the test of time, and still standing to this day, which is pretty incredible. The Inca Empire covered an area stretching from present-day Ecuador to present-day Chile. Most scholars believe Machu Picchu was a retreat for Inca royalty. So if you can imagine, Machu Picchu was kind of like the Bahamas or something that we think of today, where a lot of people go on vacation. Machu Picchu was that place to go and vacation. Next up, we have the down there in the Gali, we have the Urambe River. The two peaks that support Machu Picchu rise above the Urambe River. This river originates high in the Andes, flowing northwest from Cuzco to form what is called the Sacred Valley of the Inca. The Urambe is part of the Amazon River system. So most people have heard of the Amazon River. This river is actually part of that system and flows into that system. Next up, we have the historic sanctuary of Machu Picchu. The ruins of Machu Picchu live high in the Andes Mountains in the saddle between two peaks, Machu Picchu and Huyana Picchu. About 300 meters below, the Urambe River curves almost all the way around the bases of both mountains. The UNESCO World Heritage Site, the historic sanctuary of Machu Picchu, covers more than 39,000 hectares of land, including both Machu Picchu and Haina, I don't know how you pronounce that, Haina Picchu. So that's what we're looking at right now. We're actually looking kind of at down at the bottom is the river that winds around. And what I think is amazing about Machu Picchu is just that a lot of times, a lot of mountains and cliffs are not covered in greenery. And it's fascinating that all of these mountains are just so lush looking. First up, we're going to go to the Machu Picchu, which is called the Old Peak. So all the way over there in the distance, Machu Picchu is the name for both the famous Incan ruins and a nearby mountain. Machu Picchu Mountain at 3,051 meters served as a natural wall of defense for the settlement. It is also home to many rare tropical rainforest plants and animals. So that mountain that we're looking at right now is the Machu Picchu Mountain. Next up, we have the Temple District. And the Temple District, which is pretty neat. The Temple District is known as Acropolis. The temple district of Machu Picchu sits directly below Hayane Picchu. There are temples on both sides of the green central main plaza, but are most on the western side to the left of this panorama. So if you look over here to the left, over here, I'm drawing a circle around right now. Right over there are all where most of the temples are located in the temple district. Okay. Next up is the Inca Trail, which this is pretty cool. It's kind of, you can barely see it. It's kind of just carved right along the side of that mountain face. The Inca Trail was once the main artery connecting Machu Picchu and other Inca settlements along the Andes. Nowadays, it's trekked by serious hikers. The trail passes through many Inca archaeological sites and villages still inhabited by the descendants of the Inca people. So interesting enough, this is one of the reasons why the Incas picked Machu Picchu as the site of kind of this area of vacationing and all that kind of stuff, and because of its geographic area. If you imagine this is the main artery to get in and out of Machu Picchu, it's super difficult for people that were trying to attack to get into Machu Picchu. So this artery provided a nice natural landscape to be able to allow the protection from other people that were trying to attack. The Haina Picchu is over there. It's also known as the New Peak. Most of the structures at Machu Picchu are near the smaller of the two peaks, Hayane Picchu, which raises to 2,701 meters. There's a temple complex at its top, reached by a very steep climb from the main plaza. That would be a hefty, if you're looking at that, that's a real hefty jog to get up to the top of that peak. Next up, we're going into the urban sector of Machu Picchu. And if you think about urban sector, this is not exactly what you would think about as an urban area we think of today. The settlement of Machu Picchu has a distinct urban and agricultural areas with a wall and an open area dividing the two. This view is from one of the terraces in the agricultural district. Scholars estimate that somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people lived in the urban sector. This includes members of the royal family, some of whom were priests, and their retainers. There were also quarters for workers. So if you think about this area here, you can't really see much a really good scale of it. But 1,000 people living in this area would be pretty packed amount of people, and 1,000 people in one settlement in the 1400s when the Incas built this would be a pretty large settlement. Most places were not around that many people. Okay, so that circle, that where right in the middle of that circle is the city gate. The city gate on the ruined southwest corner was the main entrance to Machu Picchu's urban center. Through this gate, visitors passed directly into the better residential areas where royalty lived. The dwellings of the nobility spilled down the hill along the southern side. So most structures, most cities in this time had total walls around them. So that little tiny, once again, to protect themselves from outside people that wanted to take over that city. So that tiny little door was the only way to get into that city. And so of course you could have guards and stuff there and protect everyone. The Temple of the Sun over here, the Temple of the Sun, during the summer solstice, the sun rays shining through a window in this semicircular structure, aligned with the stone that stands within the peak of a nearby mountain, hence the name Temple of the Sun. Archaeologists conjecture that royals are buried beneath it. So it's kind of like a royal burial ground, or kind of like what we have modern day cemeteries. That would be where they would be buried. So this is the main plaza on top there, where it just circled right around. And the main plaza is a large green open area at the base of the temple district. It served as a gathering place and recreation area, but was also used for collecting water. Channels lead from the main plaza down into cisterns and fountains. So if you see right there in the middle, that greeny area is kind of where that main plaza is. Inithuana, or hitching post of the sun, is a tall, thin rock set. You see, if you really look hard, and I found out also that if you're on mobile, you can actually zoom in on these pictures, on some of these pictures. I don't think you can if you're on a computer, but if you're on mobile, you can. It's a small temple at the highest point of the temple district. This Ithuana served as both a sundial and a compass. It was used for make astronomical. Oh man, I can't talk today. It's really a good thing that there aren't 20 or 30 people on this call today. This is kind of like, so if you really think about ancient ruins, they relied a lot on astronomical astronomical calculations and astrological and all of this kind of stuff to do with the suns and the moons and the stars, and they really depended on that because there wasn't a whole lot of other things to go off of. Science really wasn't hugely, a lot of things hadn't really been discovered or anything with science yet. And so really their whole source of what's going to happen next, or what they project could happen next, all had to do with astrological signs. So there's a lot of things, if you study ancient ruins, there's a lot of times where there are things that are put into those ancient ruins where you think it just looks like a giant rock, but it was actually used for some sort of measuring device that would use to predict the future or anything like that. So now we're going to take a look at Machu Picchu's. Looking, there's a couple visitors sitting there just chilling. We're going to look at Machu Picchu's architecture. From the courtyard of once was the Inca royal palace, you can marvel at the ancient architects' skill at harmoniously blending their stone structures with surrounding environment. That's what Machu Picchu is all about. It doesn't look like a giant building or a giant castle or a giant fort. It just looks like everything is so blended in with the sides of the mountains. It's pretty neat. Machu Picchu's design suggests that in addition to being a royal retreat, the site was used for religious ceremonies and for tracking the sun and other solar objects. So it was kind of like a vacation home, a church, and a science lab, all wrapped up into one civilization. So we've got some fountains and drains sitting there right in front of us, right there. It almost looks like kind of like a smokestack. That would be some kind of a fountain or drain system. An elaborate water drainage system runs completely throughout the Machu Picchu ruins. In this picture here, you can see one of the drainage channels leading from the fountain down to the terraces below. Drainage channels also run alongside staircases throughout the Machu Picchu complex. So we also could check out mortarless masonry. Machu Picchu's structures reflect an astonishing mastery of stonework. If you look at these pictures, it is really amazing what the stonework has. And like I said, it was done in the 1400s, and it's still holding up to this day. The granite stones are irregularly shaped, but cut so carefully that they fit together without mortar. And if you've ever seen how they put a brick wall up or even a stone wall these days, there's a lot of mortar involved in that process. And all of these walls for all of these constructions had zero mortar in it. It's pretty amazing. Despite the ravages of earthquakes, floods, and tourist traffic, an amazing number of the complex walls are still standing. So it really contributes to how well this place was really built at the time. So this is called a trapezoidal construction. Most of Machu Picchu's windows, doors, and roof lines are trapezoids, echoing the shape of the surrounding mountains. The effect is one with deep harmony and with nature. Trapezoidal walls buttress each other, while steep roofs lessen resistance to wind and water. So it's pretty, once again, taking that aspect of nature and building it into what the structures look like, that trapezoidal. Solar orientation, as I said, a lot of stuff was focused on stars and moons, and also the sun, of course. The royal palace and the main temple lie along the same terrace. The main temple's construction is similar to the other structures in the citadel, but the precision with which its stones were carved and its enormous size are clues to its importance. Beyond that is a higher hill with the Inhuatana temple complex at the top. So a lot of times a lot of these structures were built at the highest place possible, and that's how you can tell they were mostly used for a lot of royalty. Kind of like, if anybody has any cats, it's kind of like having cats in your house. They always like to be in the highest place possible. During the 1400s, this is the agricultural sector of Machu Picchu too, by the way. That's where we've gone to. So during the 1400s, Machu Picchu's urban sector had a population of several hundred people. A relatively small number of residents lived and worked outside the settlement's walls in the agricultural area. Now both urban and agricultural sectors are inundated by thousands of visitors each day, and the maintenance work never ends. So here, if we look over here, we can actually see some of the agricultural terraces. They just kind of look like steps or something that somebody benches that somebody would sit in maybe, but they're actually for agricultural reasons. The Incas didn't invent terrace farming or irrigation and drainage systems, but at Machu Picchu, these ancient technologies were especially elegantly adapted. The terrace layer of rocks, gravel, and soil ensure efficient drainage and conserve topsoil. Water flows down via irrigation channels. So it's pretty neat. If you've ever researched agricultural practices, old agricultural practices, this terrace style is one of the things that kind of got away. We don't do a whole lot of that anymore. We don't see a whole lot of that anymore because of modern farming practices, but it's a really efficient way to get water down to every area. And it has its own row where that grass is growing on top of those terraces would be planted vegetables and fruits or grains or whatever they happen to be farming at that location. Here's some good photo opportunities down here, and it kind of shows you the gravity of how many people actually do go to visit Machu Picchu every day. Each descending terrace in the agriculture sector provides a different thrilling perspective on the main ruins below. To the left, you can see clumps of tourists waiting to get the best camera angles. Erosion of the terraces by foot traffic is a relentless problem. So this is a really good, if we look back here where we were, this is kind of an area that not a lot of people can get on, can climb on, they're not supposed to. But if you look down this area, a lot of people have used these as steps to get down to those different photo areas. And you can kind of see a lot of that rock face has really started to erode, which is really, really sad and too bad. But you know, a lot of times that's unfortunately what happens when you have a lot of tourists. Restoration and maintenance projects, so this is kind of what they're doing now to keep all of this area alive. Keeping plants growing on the agricultural terraces outside Machu Picchu, while also accommodating a constant flow of foot traffic, is a continual operation and perpetual challenge. Planting the terrace is a necessary element of erosion control for the entire site as well. So you have to, as we know, if anybody ever studies, has ever studied any erosion control, having something planted there is a way to keep that earth from moving down the hillside. If nothing were planted there and it's just ground or dirt, like you can see that lower terrace in the picture to the left, it's just dirt. Eventually, over time, water is going to run off of that, and it's going to push that dirt down over the rocks. The rocks are going to come loose, and you're going to kind of lose that entire terrace. So by planting these plants, it's going to keep the water, the plants suck up the water, the plants keep the water from moving quite as much as it would. So that's one of the restoration projects that they're doing to keep these terraces, not terrorists, these terraces alive. I really can't talk today. I apologize. So up at the top of that, it's a pretty cool little building. It kind of looks like something we might see even in the United States. It's a house of guards. This small house has been restored as an example of how ordinary dwellings would have looked in ancient times. It overlooks Machu Picchu's cemetery and agricultural sections. Many visitors begin their tours by hiking up to this point and then working their way down, which is kind of neat, kind of a starting point. It's good that they've restored that building to make it look as much as it did what it would have looked like in the 1500s. Machu Picchu was a civilization instead of touristy. Next up, we're going to talk a little bit about tourism and the Machu Picchu site. It's only 80 kilometers, which it's in this, Machu Picchu is in Peru, so they use kilometers. I wish I knew kilometers better so I could translate that for you guys, but I can't remember how many 80 kilometers is. It's not that far. I do know that. And it's 80 kilometers from Cusco, which is a major city that is in Peru. And although the ruins of Machu Picchu are pretty remote, they're not the easiest to get to. They're kind of I believe I think there's only one, maybe two roads that actually get to the ruins, and obviously it's on the side of the mountains, in the valleys of mountains, in between two mountain faces, and it's kind of challenging to get to. No roads lead to Aguas Calientes, the nearest town. So most tourists reach Aguas Calientes by train. Then comes a steep climb to the ruins on foot, or they do have bus trips that take up to the top of the ruins. Exploring the ruins means even more hiking up and down hundreds of steep stone steps. It's not exactly the most accessible ruin site, but that's kind of why it's beautiful, why it has this natural beauty, because it is nestled on the side of a mountain. So next up, we have the Intihuatana accident, and this occurred over near that mountain in 2000, in the year 2000. During a shooting of a beer commercial. I'm not quite sure what they were shooting a beer commercial at Machu Picchu for, but they were. Crane broke off part of Intihuatana, and the sacred hitching post of the sun. So it broke off a part of that mountain, that the hitching post of the sun, that mountain top. The public outcry was followed, but the one nice thing of it is it kind of brought some new awareness and social and cultural considerations of the Machu Picchu site. Before that, it had been such a place where tourists went. It was such a touristy place that no one really thought about the cultural reasons why that site was there and why the site was located where it was at, and the beauty of that. And so this huge accident that caused a part of it to break off, it caused some alarm, and it actually brought some attention to the excessive commercialism and tourism of the Machu Picchu site. Next up, we have the entrance of the ruins. So down here, they've almost made it. It's almost like a theme park almost. Machu Picchu gets more than 1 million visitors per year. It's unbelievable. Tourism has brought problems such as erosion, like we said, on the agricultural terraces, by all of the foot traffic, and also there's a problem with waste disposal. If you ever go to a theme park or something, or your county fair or the state fair, there's always a lot of stuff that's kind of just laying. There's always litter everywhere. And they usually have teams of people that come in every night when that park closes to clean up all that litter. With Machu Picchu, it's kind of difficult because if you throw your litter off the side of one of these trails down a mountain, there's a good chance that no one can get to that. No one can even get down to that mountain where that litter is. So it's something that they have to battle with a lot at the site. Next up, we do have the Inca Trail. So the Inca Trail is a site. It's like if you've ever heard of the Pacific Coast Trail or I'm drawing a blank on the one that's on the east. Appalachian or the Appalachian Trail. It's kind of like that. Serious hikers can reach Machu Picchu via the Inca Trail, a network of paths linking several ancient Inca settlements. The trek involves days of camping and strenuous climbing. To prevent damage from foot traffic, the number of hikers allowed in the trail is now limited. So once you get into that, they keep track of that amount of hikers, and after a certain amount, they cut them off because there was so much problem with foot traffic eroding. Down here at the bottom, right at the base of that mountaintop, is the Aguas Calientes, and that is the train station. Visitors can reach Machu Picchu on foot, but most choose the train. Several run daily from Cuzco and are generally packed with reservations required well in advance. Unregulated growth of the area around the train station is one of the many tourism-related threats to Machu Picchu. So unfortunately, somebody got the idea that a lot of people are coming through this area. Why don't we make some money off of those people? So they started building up. I'm sure there are restaurants. There's probably gift shops and all sorts of things that are around that train station. And unfortunately, even if you start all the way down at the base of Machu Picchu, it's eventually going to catch up from up to the top. Next up, we have the Hiram Bingham Highway. This one's pretty cool. Those little those tan strips through the mountainside, down the mountainside. That's actually a road. It's kind of hard to see from this picture, but the scale's a little off. But that's a road that you can drive. Most visitors make the final ascent to the ruins by bus along the Hiram Bingham Highway. This steep, narrow, mostly gravel paved road has very sharp curves. It's named for the Yale professor credited with discovering Machu Picchu in 1911. So it's pretty interesting. I find that fascinating that a professor from Yale is the one that kind of discovered this entire area and started to make it what we know as today, as we know of Machu Picchu. Okay, so that is Machu Picchu. That's what we have today for that. As I said, it's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite expeditions because it is just absolutely gorgeous. And so hopefully you enjoyed it. If anybody has any questions, you can unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat box. Feel free. I am going to type in the chat box where the for the field trip evaluation that you could take. Please do fill that out. It's just a few questions. Even if you don't have any comments or anything, I am trying to collect data on who is all viewing these field trips, because obviously I can't see everybody. I only have one person with the camera on right now. So I do want to collect that data to make sure that we are reaching some people. And if there's multiple people that are on this call with you, then please fill out an evaluation for each one of them. Anybody have any questions? Thanks a lot. Next week, I was trying to see what we could go to next week, and I didn't give myself enough time this afternoon to look to see what some other ones are. So do keep an eye out, and I'll make an announcement. I usually do it on Wednesdays to find out where we're going to go on Friday. So hopefully you enjoyed this and you got some information out of it. Also in the chat box, I'm not sure if I'll type it again. I do have some resources on my county website for virtual reality. It is an ever-growing list. There's not a whole lot on there right now, but it is growing, so keep an eye on that. A recorded version of this field trip is going to be also on that website, and it's also stored on my Lucas County 4-H YouTube page or YouTube channel. So either way, if you know some people that couldn't make it today and wanted to watch it, then you can point them in that direction, and they can watch some of the recorded ones. For today's, I do apologize for anybody watching it. There was a bit of a hiccup in the middle, so there's a few minutes in the middle that it was me fumbling around with technology. I apologize for that. My iPad just decided to quit working. So hopefully that doesn't happen next week. I think I won't use the pen function anymore, and maybe it'll help. So